Well, welcome back everybody. Today what you're going to be seeing is block prep and preparing our bottom end for assembly. So a bit of a recap for everybody who didn't watch the previous video on this engine. What we did, we just tore down this 304 cubic inch or 5 litre Holden V8, and this is a build series which is going to be about converting my VS Commodore from a 6-cylinder to an 8-cylinder. So now the block's somewhat cleaner than it was. All I've been using to clean out the sludge here, because this is way worse, is a bit of a screwdriver for a scraper and a brush of diesel and water, hosing it off. So after I got the rest of it cleaned up, the next bit will be is to get in with the a die grinder and clean up all of this, because the Holden V8s are known for their bad oiling, so try and help it out a bit, clean up a bit of the casting flash. Now I've got it back inside and fire the compressor and start our work. There we go guys, that's most of the deburring done on the block, so I've just cleaned up a few areas, opened up the drain backs and cleaned up the cast a bit as well. Also radius the oil galleys on the pump, get a bit better flow. But yeah, it's not needed but it's ideal. So the next thing to do is to clean up our rotating assembly, so our crank, our pistons, and then we do a dummy assembly and make sure all our clearances are good and all that sort of thing. Now with some things cleaned up, I've got to clean the block again because we went through with the die grinder. Before I do that, I've got to punch out cam bearings, and got this homemade tool which is just a bunch of bits of round stock machined to the 3 different sizes of bearing with a long threaded bar to punch them out. We also have to hone the block and get our crosshatch back, and also clean up our deck surface to make sure a good cylinder head gasket seal. So guys, just got the block back outside and it's going for its final clean before we start putting things in it, and all we got is a bucket of hot soapy water, and that'll be good for a final wash. So the block's now back inside from its final wash, and first thing I did when I washed it, well after I washed it, is to make sure you wipe all your surfaces down with a rag to get them dry, and then hose them down with WD-40 or some other water displacer. before they rust, because these clean surfaces will rust straight away. So now we can punch our cam bearings in, and with our bearings they're not all the same, they are different, so they do have to go in a particular order of which journal through the block. And I like to start with the rearmost bearing first, because when you got the tool in there it won't scratch the other bearings. If you were to do the front one and you want to do the back one, well, you might be scratching the front one up to be able to do the back one. Putting in the cam bearings, the orientation of the bearing doesn't really matter, as there are these journals so the oil can get around, except for the front one where it has to line up with that hole, otherwise it won't get any oil. Well guys, got the new cam bearings in. It's an absolute shit of a job, but it's finished. But we are now up to the point of reassembly, so now we can put in our dodgy rope seal in here and then throw our crank in. Well, I mic'd the crank in up off camera and it all comes in within the standard spec, well, tolerance, and so I'm just going to be using standard shells, and it'll all go back together with standard bearings. So the crank's now in, but I've only got it in. I haven't got these all torqued up yet because we still have to put the pickup off one of these bolts, so there's no point torquing it all up. It's mainly just to get the rope seal seated, but yeah, it's all going together. So the next thing that we'll be doing is throwing our standard cam back in. I'm only using a standard spec one because it's a daily driver car. I'm not really going for horsepower, and I don't want it to be any less reliable than it really needs to be. Biggest reason is this thing specs out fine, and I don't really want to play with the computer with the engine set up, the Delco 808, and I'm too broke for a Haltech. So the cam's now in position with its little retainer there, and that all works in fine. And that's the new replacement double row timing set. It's a Rollmaster set because the old original one was pretty buggered, but yeah, we'll get all that together now. So here's our new chain all in, which is awesome. This is a bit firmer than the old one, and I didn't have to degree the cam in or anything because it's just a standard spec cam. So all I did was the 9 links from the 2 dots, and the Rollmaster instructions make it very easy for setting up for standard timing. So it's awesome. That's all together. Next thing for us to do is to go install our pistons, which are all waiting over there. Problem is my rings haven't arrived yet, so that won't be happening. Well, that'll probably be it for this video, as we don't have any piston rings to install our pistons with, and that'll be in the next video. We'll see you then.